box that lost about 40% of its material. So it produces the masculine gender. This just to institute the law of opposites in the realm so we can figure out how to get out of the infinity loop. So we can go into the next age, the age of Aquarius.
I'm sorry, Ron, go ahead.
So whatever our avatars is now, we used to take on different forms when we incarnate. That's why they used to call us shapeshifters. It wasn't that we were shapeshifted. It was the function that you was coming here to perform. You took on an avatar that gave you the tools to best deal with the situation according to the environment around it. So you didn't always incarnate in what looked like a human. Sometimes you came back 90 feet tall. Sometimes you came back smaller than an ant. But it depended on what you was doing as one of the guys that determined how you would manifest yourself in the 3D realm. It was just some scientists that understood how the spirit worked that figured out if they opened a portal between dimensions, they could trap us in an infinity loop and enslave us. Because they didn't think we would ever figure it out.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you believe in reincarnation of some sort?
I don't believe in it, I know, because I remember multiple past lives.
Okay. Sound like Zodiacus.
Right. But all it is this how reincarnation works.
Okay.
The genetic sequence in your genome will align to allow the frequency to match the frequency of you at a prior time. Because it's like tuning a radio. When the genome aligns to the combination that allows your frequency in, that's when you come back into the physical realm. It's not that you're a different person, it's that your energy field is activated in a different point in time for you to add your spirit energy to the physical realm. Nationality is a admiralty jurisdiction designation. A ship has a nationality. I'm superior to a ship as a sovereign. If a ship has a nationality and you on par with the ship, it's only one way possible. You have to assume a straw man position so that you can do business as a vessel on the high seas, your nationality. We are ascending beyond nationality now to sovereignty, which makes nationality no longer the order of the day. It becomes obsolete. It's expired. That contract no longer is valid. 100 years ago, you would have had to assume a nationality in order to do business on the land with the corporation. So nationality 100 years ago was the order of the day in order to get us out of the economic rut we was in. We don't need none of their shit now. We don't need their nationality. We don't need their citizenship. We don't need their government. So now we have to grow beyond the national box in order to liberate ourselves into our sovereign capacity. Record of us being transported from one part of our land to another part of our land so they could tell us that we foreign to the entirety of the land. They got this recorded. That's why I say you could pull it up. Slaves transported from the north to the south.
There you go.
Well, remember, they say that the north was non-slave holding and the south held slaves.
That's not true.
So how are you transporting slaves from the north to the south? You have to be transporting POWs you caught in the north to the south. But do whatever story you tell them, our ancestral information, data, always leaks out in the detail. Oral tradition. Pay attention to that, because we didn't go by the written record. We went by the spoken word. This is why we had griots. Also, the reason why I brought up him navigating the land, because they're describing the native, but they telling us he's from Sierra Leone. He's a foreigner, but he's performing as if he's familiar with the territory he's currently on. That's the description of the native. That's why I asked you where'd you get Seminole from, and you say I wrote it. Because when the enemies tell us the story of the Gullah Wars, they call us Seminoles to control the narrative that runaway slaves joined on to the tribes, and we fought alongside the tribe as runaway slaves, but we was chiefs the whole time, bringing our armies to come fight in the Gullah Wars, to give aid and assistance to the distressed tribes that we was called. The call didn't come from Florida. The call came from the Carolinas. But we all fought the war in Florida to try to stop the advance of the Spaniard. The conquistadors is who we was fighting in Florida. And that's how we got to be called Seminoles.
Right. But Rob, understand.
So
that's Tony's,
the term Cherokee, right? If you go to Google and type up etymology of Cherokee, it's going to tell you the tribes that was classified as an exonym. They didn't name themselves Cherokee. Invaders named them Cherokee.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So what I'm showing you is they gave us a narrative, and then their universities taught it as the facts.
Right.
The purpose of the narrative was to separate the people and the land, so we would never reclaim the land from the invaders. The invaders that did it were Spaniards. These invaders brought us their Spanish conquistador culture and their English culture.
Exactly.
They was a band of royal families from Europe, across Europe, Frenchmen, Dutch, Portuguese, but they was all melanated. The servants they brought originally with them was paleface. And the slaves that they caught up in the wars they had with Mongols, Huns, and Vedics.
Right.
These people was put into villages over in Europe, but when they brought them over here as their servants, they are now a single group of people through marrying who was in the village. They bring them over here and send them to Indian school as children. And this is how they systematically replaced us, and this is why the razzle-dazzle with the names. The names is to confuse us to our identity as being from this land, the same as reparations is being used, because if you accept reparations, you accept the fact that you ain't from this land. Therefore, whatever the wealth of the land is, you have no stake in it. It's systematic, it's military, and it's cultural warfare. Dr. John Henry Clark told us that these people has been fighting a war on our culture. It's just so happened that we are also part of the culture. The bucket compared to what we owe.
I agree.
The wealth of the people of the land far exceed anything they can muster up to give us reparations. They notice they need you to claim somewhere other than the Americas. So now, whatever the turnaround bring the tribes from over here, you accepted reparations and said it had nothing to do with you. It's taking the dollar so that you can forego 100 million. It's a deceptive fraud in our face, so that there's no way they can give us reparations because they owe us everything already. There's nothing they can give us to reparate that. They can't repair that. Only thing they can do is give us what's rightfully ours, and they gonna be broke. Look, if you go and investigate, they had no right to trade in our resources. They could only stockpile and borrow money against them. They've been floating. Listen, they've been floating their legal fiction economy off money borrowed against our asset. Exactly. The national debt is owed to the tribes.
That's right. Right. That's what I'm saying.
That's right. Right. So that is just to facilitate government. But we was wealthy before they came.
You probably right,
So
lady.
we're trying to get the land and the wealth of the land back, and they trying to give you reparations to forego that.
Okay, I got you. I got you. I got
Instead
you.
of taking what you rightfully deserve and what's rightfully yours, I'm gonna give you a payout so that when anybody come for what's rightfully yours, I already paid you. You've been reparated. To add to that, when you review all of the people that the United States government gave reparations to, there's a common denominator. All of them tied back to a operational corporate government somewhere in the world, right? This government had a lobbying body that fought for their people that was in the Americas to receive the reparations payout. The prime example was the Japanese that was held in internment camps during World War II. As part of the settlement of World War II, the peace treaty, they gave reparations to those, not just Japanese. They had some Chinese mistaken as Japanese in those internment camps too. But they didn't give them reparations. They only gave the Japanese reparations because it was part of a negotiated contract between two corporations to settle a war. We're talking about the reparations. First of all, their money is legal fiction. It's fiat. That means they said it has value. Ever since 1933, when they took us off the gold standard, their money has no value.
Right.
It's only valuable as long as they can use it to trade oil.
Right.
Well, the BRICS nations then damned them on that dollar. So now their reparative dollars have no value to the tribes. Our wealth is tied to the land. Give us what's rightfully ours, and you can take your monopoly money and wipe your ass with it. Right. But if you accept the monopoly money, what they are in turn saying is, I'm from another land and I got a lobbying body that represents me on that land in the treaty negotiations to give me a reparations for the conditions you put me in. My question becomes, if you're going to receive reparations, which African nation that you say you came from has a lobbying body lobbying to get you your reparations? The only way, because the reparations is tied to your African slave trade identity. It's not tied to your indigenous status to the land. Right, because they was never supposed to cross the Appalachians to begin with.
Exactly.
It was the Lewis and Clark expedition that crossed them over into the West. It was the Mexico-American War that gave them control of California down to Texas.
Right.
Right. Notice there was a war.
Right.
The land that they held in treaty is the result of the resolution of a war. All this stuff is to disassociate the people from the land. Yeah. If we reclaim the land back, all of them, we was in a warlock. Right. This is what put us in poverty. Right?
You know,
the warlock. We have to remember how they got the land from those tribes in the South.
I'm glad
our people spoke mostly tribal tongue in the South during the 1800s. We knew to the language called English, and we totally ignorant to the language called legalese. They draw what's called the sharecropper agreement. The sharecropper agreement was being forced as a squatter right. Right? So they come in and they lend the farmer money.
Right. Not just that, tools.
And when they couldn't pay the money back, they took the land.
They didn't make
no. Right. Not yet. First, they'll give them a good crop. They'll let them get a good crop. This make them believe that the one holding the agreement with them is honorable and will cover what they said, and they will accept the split on the back end for the crop. Next year, the crops go in, beautiful crops all across the field. 3 a.m., all of the crops on fucking fire.
Damn, that's typical of them.
Next year roll around. Don't worry about the fire last year. We'll just roll it into next year's payment. That's how we got the plantations, sweetheart swindles. The plantations wasn't a big house; it was Big Mama house.
Mm-hmm.
Until this new slickster from Europe rolled in, married her, and poisoned her to death. The tribes, when they do that, that's only to give it back to the daughters of the father whose children it was. They didn't take the land for selfishness. They tried to keep the land in the family at all costs.
Oh, they do that in Africa. I'm sorry. I had to place it.
Look, so what they doing, who is allowed to levy the tax on the land?
Who's allowed to levy the tax?
You have to be the one that's holding the title to the land.
Yeah. The deed.
You can't tax a land that's not under some kind of title treaty.
Right. Oh, okay.
This is the law of the landlords. The landlords came from Europe. They didn't come from over here.
Mm-hmm.
And they use barristers to do their bookkeeping.
They're doing it right now.
They've been doing it the whole time.
Right now.
This is what I'm trying to get us to see. All of this admiralty jurisdiction, nationality is the law of the flag, the law of the high seas. This is why a ship has a nationality, and all of the people have to have a nationality. Disregard your
really.
As long as you paying taxes on a piece of property, you're not the rightful owner.
Right.
That's what
You're the renter. You're the tenant. This is part of the squatter rights. This is what they use in the squatter rights in the treaties.
Yeah, man.
Look, the only reason why, listen, go back to Martin Luther King explaining to us how they brought the peasantry from Europe and undergird them with a financial floor to mechanize their farms. Just because this is just the floor is still on top of the land. So the whole time they can use the land. Some of the farmers are now being paid not to farm. Been doing it for over 100 years. I got you all this farmland, but I'm gonna pay you not to farm nothing. Right? That's because they need to control the output of the food resource. So all of this goes back to the eminent domain of the squatter right for the squatters to secure a piece of land.
That's what I
from the landlords who came from Europe. And the
Yeah.
landlords is operating under false pretenses of being our
Yes.
government under the color of law.
Yes.
That's not us. The person asked the question, how do you claim your land back when it's communities on them? We work with the community. We don't displace people in our culture. We work with the people that's in the community to restructure the community and allocate resources. When the big mamas is back in charge, it's about making sure everybody got food, clothing, and shelter.
Right.
It ain't got nothing to do with I'm gonna bully you off the land because I don't think you're supposed to be here. It's about the return of the resources back to the people from a government that sucked all of the people's resources out.
We don't stick together.
This is the crystal globe. We looking at have and have nots in the New World Order. We chose not to be the have nots, so we took it all. By blood and by right. We was born with the right to restore the balance back to the people and the lands.
And
all we got to do is put Big Mama back on her seat and go on about our business. Everything will fall in place according to the laws of nature. These contracts, that's what they use to enforce their jurisdictional authority to govern what you do on your land. They make you sign an adhesion contract. Most people don't know when they do their mortgage contract that they sign in the agreement to follow what's the homeowners association of the area. They don't tell you if you don't read it for yourself, right? They're not gonna tell you what you have, why you got to pay taxes. They gonna tell you it's to supply the services of the local government. That's supposed to be paid from out of DC and the capital of the state. Not supposed to be paid for by the resident. But remember, the landlords is the ones who's issuing these patents for squatter rights, disregarding the tribal lands where our ancestors is actually buried at. This is making them sacred lands, and they don't qualify under none of the treaties. The sacred lands do not qualify for none of the treaties. And we got ancestors buried from coast to coast. So they asserting their jurisdictional authority based on treaties and based on contracts they making with individuals. It has nothing to do with them having the proper jurisdiction. It has something to do with them having us go along to get along without telling us that we going along to get along.
Mm-hmm.
It's all deception at its finest. We can argue the particulars of law
to 100%,
right? But we still need to know what they use in the law to do to the people who's rightful heirs to the land. And they using what they call in the law to usurp the land law, the common law, the law of the people on the land of the tribes. All tribes west of the Appalachians are called in law dependent tribal nations. They call outlaw tribes, and they call belligerent tribes. Why do they call us this? Because we never signed none of their contracts because we never agreed. They only have a contract with 5 civilized tribes for a small portion of the Virginia territory, is what it was called at the time. They don't got no contracts to cross the Appalachians. They made that shit up as they go. And then as they make it up, we end up believing they are legitimate government, so we support their takeover and shenanigans to get us to surrender the land.
Mm-hmm.
No tribal chief from this land believes in selling land, because to us it's like selling your mama and your children, and we don't believe in that. Yeah. The people that came over here sold their mama to leave and sold their children when they got here. Yeah. And that was called the Ottawa Territory, and it was a conglomeration of tribes from all through what they call it the Northwest Territory. But we called it Ottawa Territory, and it was a group of tribes that was belligerent to the settlers crossing the Appalachians, interfering with the inland, what became later known as the Louisiana Purchase. Yeah. The Protectorate Agreement of the French that they sold to the English was to make sure nobody crossed the Appalachians and went into, this is why you bring up King George, because they was not supposed to cross the Appalachians and go into what they called back then Indian territory or Bigfoot country, where them niggas with them big ass feet be stomping you across your neck.
Oh, come on now. My feet ain't
so when they telling us the stories, they telling us we mythical creatures, we werewolves. No, we not werewolves. We just werewolf pelts. When we fucking you up, right? We wear the pelts of the jackal, or what we call over here the coyote, right? So they came over as bloodsuckers. They vampires. We was already here, and they say we look like kin, so they call us lichens. And they tell us it's a story called Twilight. It's just a love story, but between a little pink girl and a little pink boy. But the native tribe turning into werewolves in the movie, and the pink motherfucker come from Europe to marry the little chick because she got the blood from both tribes, the European tribe and the American tribes. So he gonna try to marry her so they can have this special baby. This is the story is redundant. Yeah. It's the same shit over and over. Your whole Jesus Christ story reworked. Born of the blood of the Jews, but they murdered his ass at the hands of the Romans. It's the same fucking story. Yeah. They just dress it up in a different suit. It's the same goddamn lie. It's just a well-dressed lie now. It was dressed up to look like a superhero. Yeah. Remember, the pale face came for a drop of blood.
They always hurting somebody's feelings.
Right. J.A. Rogers in Sex and Race and Nature Knows No Color line say, and Superman and Man say that there was no self-respect in one of us that would touch one of them, and there was none of them that would touch one of us. How do you get one of us to get with one of them? You got to tell us we can't do it. You got to make us rebel against the order of the day. They had no beauty standard, but they can only develop one once they get their drop of blood because their genetics doesn't allow for it. This is why they wore the corset dresses with the fox fanny. Yeah, nature knows no color line. He's telling you that when they came over here, we wouldn't mix with them. We wouldn't touch them motherfuckers. Right? So when you force a people until you get to the mulatto stage and the octoroon stage, you can turn them loose on either side of the fence and they'll mix for you to get the drop of blood throughout the spectrum. This is what he was reading when he was showing you that we ain't like them motherfuckers and they ain't like us. But they have to get their drop of blood some kind of way. And they unleashed the reign of terror to get it. And they was brought over here to keep us from ever getting into the institutions to get to the information. Right? So this is what he's telling you in the story that he was reading is my man is describing how we perceive them, how they perceived us, and trying to figure out how to make us to perceive each other differently from two different sides of the world. Right? The snowman meet the sun man. Goddamn. Iceman inheritance. They got to go through a catharsis to get that evil shit out their blood that was put into them in the laboratory. The catharsis look like racism. It looks like sexism. It looks like oppression until they get fed up with the shit their parents did. That one drop of blood take hold in their psyche. They ain't gonna like that shit. So now you're gonna see pale faces. What overdrew all this? I'm gonna make the pale face tell you the truth. How he gonna do that? He gonna talk to that one drop of blood. And that one drop of blood, I don't care what vessel it's in, it's gonna respond to the chief. This is what the whole crucible of God, great melting pot story that they're telling us the whole time. They telling us what they doing. And we not paying it no attention because it sounds like a slick slogan from the government. It's not. This is why eugenics was created, to make it look like they wanted to genocide us, to force us to accept some people we wouldn't accept. It's reverse psychology used at its maximum potential in a sociological instead of an individual capacity. I don't give a fuck about none of that shit no more. Now I'm trying to get, but I want my big mama back. Fuck the bullshit. Because when Big Mama come home and all of her daughters get their shit back, we good. We could figure out everything else at that point.
So when is that supposed to happen?
Now in real time. Yeah. It's going down real time right now. The process is processing.
Understand, Big Mama. This part of me, I'm trying to.
You might not be one of us.
Or so it takes to be one of us.
He's a
in order to recognize Big Mama.
He might not be.
Why wouldn't you understand Big Mama, but you understand Big Papa?
He's a Hebrew Israelite. I mean,
Listen,
there you go. That's the doctrine.
The return of Big Mama.
They're restoring the matriarchal structure that the tribes operated on before the rogue patriarchs brought their Bible bullshit over here.
Mm-hmm. Paleolithic time.
It's just as simple as that. We say Big Mama because every clan called their tribal mother Big Mama.
Mm-hmm.
Or something like that. Mudia, Nana. Right? It just depends on who she was, but the tribal mother, we called them Big Mama.
God.
He directly described the nature of lions. But what's the nature of the gorilla?
Same thing. A female gorilla.
It's not the same thing. When a male gorilla take over, he don't kill none of the babies.
Well, I know
father them all. The reason why I pointed out the difference in the nature of the lion and the gorilla is the evolution of the masculine in the species. The evolved masculine understand that the nature of the feminine, she may have children when he meet her. And the evolved man is going to nurture and father them children like they his own. But the unevolved man is going to have an attitude with the children and become easily frustrated with them because they not his own. It's a difference. It's a different, it's levels to this shit.
I understand, but we talking about gorillas or men? Because you're saying the uninvolved.
The same reason, the same way you matched up the lions, I'm just showing you that the difference in the two species. The human species is above all that shit. But we don't want to accept